The following episode is brought to you in part by Women in Motorsports North America, a community of professional women and men devoted to supporting opportunities for women across all disciplines of motorsport by creating an inclusive and resourceful environment to foster mentorship, advocacy, education, and growth, thereby ensuring the continued strength and successful future of our sport.
It's International Women's Month, and we couldn't think of a better way to honor it than by bringing together three phenomenal female drivers who are tearing up the track and rewriting the rules. From late models to sprint cars, these women have proven that racing isn't just a man's game, it's anyone's game if you've got the grit, guts, and drive to win. We'll talk with Erin Crocker-Evernham, Alison Slode, and Taylor Ferns about their journeys, challenges, and how the sport is evolving for the next generation. So buckle up, because this conversation is going to be fast, fierce, and full of insight from the best in the biz.
And with that, I'm your host, Crew Chief Eric from the Motoring Podcast Network, along with Lauren Goodman from the Revs Institute, welcoming everyone to our center conversation. Erin, Alison, Taylor, welcome to the show.
Hello. Hi, thanks for having us.
Great to be here.
There's always a superheroine origin story. So let's briefly talk about how everybody got into short track racing. Can each of you share a little bit about your journey into this discipline of motorsport? What sparked your passion for the sport? Who wants to kick it off? Alison?
Sure. So I actually started out very young in my career doing gymnastics and dance. Had nothing to do with motorsports whatsoever. So I watched my younger brother run around the racetrack in quarter midgets at a local track near us. After a year of watching him, I told my dad, this isn't it. I don't want to sit in the stands anymore. So he put me in a car, and that's really history. Pretty simple. I wasn't too great when I started off. I was very timid, quiet, not very aggressive. So my dad, 3 years in, said, I don't know if this is for us. I don't think this is going to work. And I don't know what it was, but a switch kind of went off in my head, and I haven't stopped since. I've been racing since I was about 7, so a little over 25 years.
Taylor, you got a similar story starting off real young in sprint cars.
Yes, I started off in quarter midgets at 6 years old, but I got into that because I come from a racing family. My uncles on my mom's side raced late models in ARCA back in the 80s and early 90s. So before I was ever even around, I just ended up growing up around it. We celebrated Daytona 500s in our family like it was the Super Bowl. When my dad and my uncle discovered quarter midgets when I was about 6, we drove up to nearby Lansing, Michigan, and I sat in the car for the first time, and it was love at first sight. Been doing it ever since. It's definitely my number one passion. I'm completely obsessed with it and definitely couldn't imagine my life without it.
Erin, how about you?
My story actually is very similar. It started in quarter midgets. I'm the youngest of 5. I have 2 older brothers and 2 older sisters, and I did everything my brothers did. I played ice hockey. I played in the dirt bikes, you name it. So I grew up at the racetrack, and I wanted my turn. I had one older sister who had raced, and my dad called her a social racer because she wasn't aggressive and she would let people pass her. So I knew from the get-go that I needed to start strong. So I started at 7 years old, and that was the beginning of a wonderful career.
Let's talk a little bit more about growing up at the track. Like you guys, I grew up around the track too, in the road racing world, in the asphalt tracks. And you started to see a lot of kids phase out of racing because they were involved in it for so long. You guys followed in your family's footsteps. So what kept you there? What kept you committed? What kept you grounded in racing after all those years?
I didn't specifically grow up watching my uncles race because they raced before I was born, but I think being around the family that I was and how immersed and passionate my family was about it. And then when my siblings and I and my cousin eventually started racing, we were just so passionate about it. I did have opportunities when I was 18, 19, and then through my early 20s, I went off and I went to college. I went for my master's. I worked for a law firm for 5 years, and I wasn't really racing that much, if at all. And at that time, that's when I really realized I always kind of knew I was really passionate about racing, but it's kind of like you don't recognize what you have until you lose it type of situation. So then when I came back, I just automatically knew that this was what I wanted to do even more so than before. I think it's your passion. I think you also realize your impact being a female in motorsports. I remember growing up when I was watching racing before I actually physically started, And there wasn't a high visibility of females in motorsports. So, I wasn't sure at that young age of what I could actually do in racing. And so then grow up when I was younger and I'd be racing. I remember seeing Erin race the ARCA races and we'd be watching it on the TV in the trailer. That's that visibility as I feel like I was coming up the ranks that more females got the more time has gone on.
So were there any other girls on track with you, or were you looking at people like Erin on the TV for your inspiration or even camaraderie?
Yeah, I would say in quarter midgets, there was more girls, but it was almost kind of like the funnel effect. You talk about people phasing out as they go up the ranks or they get older and have opportunities to go to school or play sports or whatever. And, as I got older and went up through the ranks, it was almost like immediately as I started racing midgets and sprint cars when I was 13, 14, I was mainly the only girl for the most part, if not one extra here and there.
Is that true for Erin and Alison? The same for y'all?
Yeah, for me, it was really similar. I feel like in quarter midgets, it was a family sport. A lot of girls did it. And then maybe you come middle school, high school. I don't know if it was necessarily because they didn't see anyone ahead of them doing it or if it was because the family influence. Like I always give my parents a lot of credit because they never told me I couldn't do anything. I played ice hockey with the boys. They never said that you're a woman, you can't be a race car driver. Moving out of quarter midgets and moving up the ranks, it was fewer and fewer women around me. And thankfully there were women like Lynn St. James who helped provide even back then, 25 years ago, I'm aging myself, but she had her driver development program. So we started to see a nice path or people that had already broken barriers for us.
I'm pretty much in the same boat with Taylor and Erin. Quarter midgets was a very family oriented, so I didn't see too many, but I definitely saw more than when I went into 3/4 midgets and then eventually ISMA super modifieds and Oswego super modifieds. After I left quarter midgets, I was the only woman to race in the rest of those series.
Was some of that also because you're taking a step up, not just in competition and the commitment and the time it takes, but also the funding? Is that really when sponsorship comes into play when you're taking that step?
Yeah, I think once you get out of the quarter midgets and like the family oriented sport and you want to move up in any type of racing, it's definitely comes down to financial decisions that need to be made. And I was very fortunate that my family supported me throughout my 3/4 midget career and the early stages of my super modified career. But the last 3 to 5 years kind of turned into I need to find money and need to find sponsorship in order to continue.
Allison, you brought up a really important point is when you made that transition away from the midgets into the bigger cars, you were alone as a woman amongst all these other drivers. Did that in some way incentivize you, motivate you? Was that something you had to overcome? Would you say that was maybe one of the biggest challenges moving up the ranks?
So I wouldn't necessarily consider it a challenge. I definitely looked at it more as an opportunity to kind of just prove myself, getting out on the track the first time in an Oswego super modified and all these guys that have been racing there for 25, 30 years. I'm looking at somebody like Joe Gosick, who's run there the last 42 years, and I ended up beating him in my first race out on the track. It was more like a challenge for myself. I didn't really look at it as something to prove. Nobody likes getting beat by a girl. Not the guys at Oswego, I can tell you that. I kind of use it as like a fun little joke with all those guys. Now they're great. Get out there, prove yourself, and they can't ask questions.
So Erin and Taylor, when you left the kids' table and moved up, what was it like being the only woman?
Similar to Allison, even 20, 25 years ago, there were opportunities because I was a woman. There's always been some desire to have a woman be successful. So some doors opened for me, but obviously there's a lot of scrutiny. Once you got through those doors, the magnifying glass was on you. But I sometimes took it as a little bit of motivation. One of the first years I was racing a sprint car in upstate New York, we had a motorsports expo like before the season started where everyone brings out their new cars and the tracks promote everything. Another car owner in our series pulled the guy I was driving for at the time over and said, "Hey, like, what are you doing putting her in a second car? Like, you're going to wreck all our stuff this year." And like, it started right away. And, those things obviously bother you, but they really motivated me. And I credit that to having 4 older siblings who always tease me and to this day we bicker. So I always had thick skin and I always kind of get motivated. So right away, you start dealing with, all right, we're in a different world. Quarter midgets was family. Now this is getting real. And there are plenty of people that don't want to see you succeed. And thankfully, there's a good amount that want to see you succeed. But the tides definitely turn when you step up to the next level.
As you're moving up the ranks, the seriousness and the commitment level increases. Like Erin, also being young, like when I first started racing full-size midgets and then full-size sprint cars at 13, 14 years old, it's like I'll echo the sentiment to where when you do start succeeding, I mean, I won my first full 410 sprint car race in my first ever start. And right after that, it was at first people were like, okay, first off, you're putting this young racer in a car, but not only that, she's a girl. And so I think everybody was kind of giving, the eyes with that. And then when I went out there and won, then in the drivers' meetings thereafter, it was people would have an issue with the line I was running or this or that. And it's like all these different nuances come up. And it's like, no offense, but I just kicked your butt in my first ever sprint car race. And now you're trying to bring up reasons why I shouldn't even be racing. You have to just have a thick skin, like a tough mentality, and just keep pushing through. And I was so young that it's kind of like I didn't even pay attention to it. It was almost like I didn't even recognize those patterns until I was older and going through college and taking gender economics classes.
Which I wanted to ask, since I have three fierce competitors here, to talk about the winning mindset, because motorsport requires physical toughness, but also a lot of mental toughness. So once you get in the car, is that even on your mind, or do you have a totally different process where you have to clear all of that out of your mind in order to win?
I think you just got to be focused on the task. When we all show up at the racetrack, to me, I would never think to myself mentally, oh, I'm a girl, and then second guess my talents or my abilities. I always thought of myself as one of the guys. I mean, I'd even show up younger. I was super casual, laid back. I don't show up with makeup or my hair done, t-shirt, jeans, hair up in a bun or back in a hat. And I'm just one of the guys. Don't even want to differentiate myself even based on my looks or my gender in that regard. So, you get in the seat, you put your helmet on, you strap in, like I want to win the race just as bad as anybody else. It's just that mentality you have to have.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. To me, once the engine fires, I think I was able to block all of that out. You deal with that out of the car, but once you get in the car, whether that's the winning mentality or whatever that might be, it's easy to shut everything else off and just focus on your one job.
Yeah, I'd have to agree as well. The track is one of my happy places. So getting there is nice, and getting checked into the track and walking in and unloading the car is kind of where it all starts. You meet with your crew chief, meet with your team, set up a game plan for the day, and you're not really thinking about all this outside noise, whether it's from social media or people at the track or fans. You're really just focused on the task at hand and making sure you're getting the job done.
Unfortunately, a lot of drivers fall victim to the red mist, we like to call it as coaches. So I'm wondering if that plays in. You strap in, you got your helmet on, you're out there to win. Short track is probably one of the most intense disciplines of competition when it comes to motorsports. So I wanted to talk about maybe some of the more memorable on-track battles, standout moments, or where you were just overcome by the red mist.
I don't know about the red mist, but I have a good story where I actually met my current teammate. I was racing ISMA Wing Super Modifieds at Oswego and got in one of those situations where I'm running out front. I had car issues. I had actually a fuel pickup issue. And at the time, we didn't quite know what it was. I just knew that I wasn't going to pull in running first. So Otto, my teammate, was actually running second behind me. I had never met him. I had never spoken to him. Knew a little bit about him, but the record didn't intimidate me. I just knew that I had to stay in front of him. And on every restart, my fuel pickup was not functioning properly. And it would take me like a lap to kind of get going. And once I got going, I could stay out in front of him. I did not beat him. He beat me, which was the problem, because everybody thought like, oh my gosh, you couldn't just cut her some slack. She's a girl. She was going to win her first super modified race. I was like, absolutely not. I don't want anybody to cut me slack. And they actually ended up giving him more of a hard time because he beat me, and that was potentially going to be one of my first wins. So that was like one of those situations where it was kind of a little bit backwards, where people were wishing that he didn't actually race me in the way that I wanted to be raced. I appreciate him for teaching me that lesson. And I told the fans, like, I don't want anybody to ever cut me slack on the racetrack.
Really memorable moment for me, and something that still gets brought up, is when I was 15, I was racing a midget at Kokomo Speedway, and I was racing Dave Darlin, of all people. So, if you know short track racing, midget sprint cars, Dave Darlin is one of the best. I was 15 at the time, and we were racing for the lead. It was with one to go. And I remember the whole crowd was on their feet standing, and Kokomo will pack them in. Something had happened with my motor. And so then I was like riding the cushion, and I ended up almost like missing the cushion because I was down a cylinder, and I ended up spinning out and lost the race. In that regard, it was not very memorable. But after the race, if you would have thought I won the race with all the fans and everybody that was in the pits and lining up, and then Dave came down, and even though we didn't actually win, it was still a memorable moment for me, and people still talk about it.
I mean, I have a few memorable moments, and I was in Australia racing a sprint car for a whole season and went over there at 21 years old, knew nobody, just flew over there, met this family, met this team. I flew over actually on Christmas Eve and landed and couldn't even get McDonald's. But regardless, we kind of struggled, wasn't the most well-funded team. And at the very end was the Grand Annual Sprint Car Classic. It's like the biggest sprint car race they have in Australia. And I was running second in the B main, one lap to go to qualify for the A main. No woman has ever done it before. And a fellow American took me out. Just completely cleared me out. So in Australia, they make calls. They disqualified him because he was aggressive driving. Well, he wouldn't get off the track. They're giving him a black flag. He won't get off the track. So finally, they just throw the checker. So then you have to go back a lap. Technically, the lap before I was in second. So it was a crazy story, but it was probably 15,000 people. I don't remember the exact number, but they pack them in Australia and they were all chanting my name. And it was the neatest moment because it was like everyone was actually cheering for the girl. Crazy story because it was a fellow American who I still kind of have a grudge with to this day because of that incident. But it was a really neat moment in my career, but it was a really special moment where I felt like the entire crowd was rooting for me.
So to add to that, for those listening at home, the other thing that you have on your CV is that you're, to this date, the first and only woman to win a World of Outlaws feature. Is that right?
That is right. It is over 20 years ago, which again makes me feel old. I'm really proud of that, but I'm also not proud that there hasn't been another woman, that we're not supporting more women. It's cool to have that record, and people ask what I'll feel like when it's broken. And I'm like, I'll be happy. It stood for a long time, but it's made to be broken. I want to see another woman be very successful in a sprint car.
Specifically, when it comes to short track, in your own career, Erin, have you seen the opportunities expand? Is there kind of like a plateau? Where do you see it historically, and where do you see the trajectory going?
It's hard for me to say because honestly, I still am involved in racing media, but I haven't driven in goodness 10 or so years. So we're still involved in motorsports, but I'm not in the day-to-day thick of the short track stuff. I see other women that are racing sprint cars now, but there's not a lot. There's not a lot at the top levels. I see them racing in ARCA, and there's some of them are well funded. To be honest, sometimes I feel like we haven't changed nearly as much as I would have liked. There's been push for diversity. There's been programs. I love what Lynn and Cindy Sisson are doing with Women in Motorsports North America. There's all this backing, but we're still not getting the results I'd love to see.
That's really interesting. And I'll throw this question out to Taylor and Alison too, because we've been talking to drivers from other disciplines that are having, I think, more success in getting women in the driver's seat, and also women engineers, women in the booth. What are they doing that you think maybe we could import into short track?
NHRA is doing such a great job with diversity. Also, late model racing, I feel like, is thriving as in comparison to short track racing, open wheel short track racing, if you will. To where like Erin's right, like sprint car racing. From when I started racing midget sprint cars when I was 13, 14, and then if you want to do like a 10 years later or now 15 years later, instead of me just being the only girl at the track, now there may be two. But I still show up to a pavement sprint car race, no different than when I was 15. Now I'm 29. I'm still the only girl for a pavement sprint car race. Almost the same thing when I was racing wing, dirt, 360, 410 sprint cars. And it's like Silver Crown Racing. Okay, I started doing that when I was 16. Now we have two girls. It's like, so we doubled, but there's still 20, 30 car fields. So Erin's right to where the progress is really not there. And I feel like a lot of it comes back to, I don't know if short track open wheel racing is just really daunting. And obviously there's not a lot of girls now, so it's not really a selling point. To the younger girls, obviously, I think there's this perception that open wheel short track racing is really dangerous. And parents feel safer by putting their daughter or their kid in a late model or a stock car. And then I also feel like open wheel short track racing, they don't highlight the females that they have now, which I think is a really important thing to do. You'll look and see other series really pinpoint the girls that they have and make sure that they're posting that on social media and highlighting that. And I also feel like there's a little bit of a lapse with what we're doing as well.
Yeah, at least in my area, southeastern Pennsylvania, I'm in the dirt track world and I don't do any of it. I am an asphalt girl through and through. I think it's just the opportunity is also a little bit smaller, especially doing the kind of the track that I did. So quarter midgets, 3/4 midget, and then super modified. So there's not a whole lot of feeder series if you're not doing dirt and you're not doing sprint cars and you're not doing 270s and all that kind of stuff. It's very specific. And I don't think tracks and promoters aren't really going out and looking for women. It's really maybe lack of interest on our end. I do know that up in New York, where Oswego super modifieds are there's plenty of little girls running around the racetrack, saying, I want to be a race car driver someday. But then again, there's not a lot of feeder programs that get people into 3/4 midget asphalt racing and then super modified. So that may be where we're missing.
Where would you say it branches off though? Like if you found your way into those disciplines like you did, where would your next logical step be? Let's say, yeah, I've done what I need to do here. Where would you recommend people go after?
I don't know because I don't really have any interest in going anywhere other than super modifieds. So I really think it's just personal preference. Like I said, I'm an asphalt girl through and through. And if somebody threw a dirt card ride at me, I'd have to think twice about it. So it's a preference.
Would you ever consider a different discipline? Let's just say going to Trans Am, where the types of cars have similar horsepower and drivetrain layouts and things like that?
Yeah, of course, I would definitely consider it, but like my heart is super, super set on those Oswego super modifieds. There's just something about them that I can't fathom wrapping my head around anything else. I grew up on quarter midgets going like, this is what I want to do someday. And then I watched people like Lou Ciccone and Joe Gosick run, kind of fell in love. So that's my passion.
So, Erin, to Allison's point, there's no feeder system into this. You talked about family. It's a big family discipline of motorsport. Taylor, too, you're kind of getting back into it. Where would you set your sights after you've cut your teeth in these disciplines of racing?
Kind of had the opportunity to do it. And I raced in ARCA and I raced the NASCAR Truck Series. I ran some Xfinity Series. It was the Busch Series at the time. I really wanted to be an IndyCar driver, though. The open wheel to me, my first love in racing, and to this day, my passion is sprint cars. I do a podcast every single week about World of Outlaws and wing sprint cars. In my younger years, I wanted to be the best. And, the best went to Indy, the best went to NASCAR. I just wanted to be the best. And I loved Indy cars. I have an engineering degree, so I'm fascinated with open wheel cars like that. And when I finally won a World of Outlaw race and started to get opportunities, met an agent and he said, well, we're going NASCAR racing. And I said, well, I don't want to go NASCAR racing. I want to go IndyCar racing. And he said, well, you don't have any money. There's opportunity in NASCAR. At the time, there was a start for the big diversity push in NASCAR. I went that way because it was opportunity. Racing is extremely expensive, and I didn't have any money or funding behind me. I didn't have any main sponsors. And it was a wonderful experience. I was able to race in ARCA for a while. I ended up, like I said, trucks, Xfinity. And then when that kind of all started to fall apart, I went back to sprint cars because that's, to me, which we all have our personal preference, but I love a wing sprint car. There's just so much horsepower, so much downforce. They weigh nothing, and they are just really fun to drive. So, it's really a matter of, like Alison said, it's a preference. Really my preference, like her passion is the super modifieds, mine is the sprint cars. But when I was younger, I wanted to be the best, and I did want to get to the top level of the sport and see if I could compete against the best.
I honestly feel a lot like how Erin does. Like I'd grit my teeth sprint car racing. That's what I love to do. But obviously it's hard to make a living doing that. Tried going the stock car route, late model route when I was 16. I did some ARCA when I was 17. And the plan for me was, assuming funding allowed me, to do full-time ARCA when I was 18 and kind of continue on that stock car path. I come from a stock car background. My family's completely obsessed with NASCAR. But I always, at the end of the day, just wanted to race because that's what I love to do and be the best at it, like how Erin said. And so when the whole stock car scene didn't work out, that's when I ended up going back wing sprint car racing because that's what I really loved. The path there from like the open wheel short track racing that we do, there really isn't one. It's kind of like you make your own. Like the past 20 years, you'd probably see more so people going from sprint cars to NASCAR because it's more, I feel like, an easier jump. There's more opportunity. It's easier to get money for NASCAR because NASCAR is more marketable. Whereas I did have the opportunity. I tried to do some Indy Next racing last summer, some of the oval races because I had funding for it. But I had funding for the races. I didn't have the funding to necessarily accurately prepare me for those races. I knew it was going to be a big jump, but it was a bigger jump than what I had even anticipated and planned for. And so it takes a lot more money than what you even expect on pen and paper when they show you, oh, it's going to cost you this much to do this. You got to factor in another $400,000 or $500,000 for all the other testing and experiences that you need before you actually get there. Because the path to doing that from sprint car racing isn't really the same as what it was 20, 30 years ago.
Can I ask about money? Brass tacks. The differences when you're making jumps to levels, is it a factor of 10? You're going from, say, $30,000 to do a season to 300,000. Is this the kind of numbers we're talking about?
I think it depends again on the series that you're in. Obviously, if you're going from quarter midgets to three-quarter midgets to super modifieds, it's not quite by 10, but it also depends on, your team and your regiment and your maintenance program and, what you show up to the track with, whether it's one car or two cars, you have a backup car, you have a team, that whole thing. So, I raced with just my dad and I, and in super modifieds when we first got into wing supers, and I had no team. I had no backup car, and we had very little spare parts. And if we broke, we broke, and that was it. But then racing with John Okocha and Otto Sitterly, they had 2 or 3 cars, and we had 10 guys, and we had 2 trailers. So I think it's very specific to your sport, and it's very specific to how you like to prepare your car and, a maintenance program that your team has and how much money you spend.
I feel like I'm a little out of the loop. I haven't been in those situations in years, but it's certainly when you climb the ladder from quarter midgets to, say, micros, if that's the route that I kind of went to sprint cars, it is exponential. It goes from family funded operation to, oh goodness, like if you want to win and you want to run for championships, you need spare motors, you need spare cars, especially in on the dirt. You hurt a few chassis each year. There's no way around it. So yeah, I think to do things right, it goes exponential.
For sure. You could probably, for what I'm running now, if I was just to run all the payment sprint car races and then the entire USAC Silver Crown schedule, I could easily go through 300, 400,000 just doing that. If I want to run a full season of World of Outlaws nowadays, it's easily $1 million. Like what had Erin mentioned, all the chassis you need, all the motors, all the travel, accommodation, the crew guys that you need. You could easily go through money like it's water. And then also if you want to jump and go NASCAR racing, or if you want to go IndyCar racing, that's another big jump. And also the structure of the organization and the team. Personally, the NASCAR structure and the way they do their kits now, as they call them, is more efficient, just my opinion, than the way IndyCar does it. It's almost like with IndyCar or Indy Next, when you're presented with an agreement, the number that they put down is basically your stake, if you will. But then there's a bunch of like a la carte items, like everything else is extra. So yeah, on pen and paper, your season might be 1.2 million. But if you want to do this extra testing, or if you want to wrap on your car, or if you want to do this or that, you could easily spend another $200,000. Or then if you crash, then that doesn't include crash clause. And some driver last year had $400,000 or $500,000 in crash damage. Like, it's just crazy. So you could easily spend that money in Indy Next. You could have paid for a whole season in NASCAR trucks, and everything's included. So it's kind of pick and choose your battles.
Taylor, I'm glad you took us there, because this gives us an opportunity to talk about the good, the bad, and the indifferent of racing, the business side of everything. Lauren mentioned earlier about sponsorship and visibility, how huge they are in racing. What I'm curious about is how sponsorship works in the sprint car, super modified, dirt track world, because we see how big companies, tech firms rally behind the NASCARs and the Indy cars and the World Endurance Championships, and you see all these names of consumer goods that we all buy all the time, but that's not the case in your guys' world. So how does sponsorship work, and what are the challenges to getting a business to sponsor you in the sprint car world?
I think that the sprint car world, again, I'm not in it every day now, so I can't totally speak for it. But my time in the years after, it's a niche audience, right? It's a small audience, but there are people that are really passionate about sprint cars. So I feel like in the sprint car world, a lot of it is you get an opportunity to drive for somebody, and they either have funding or they have the sponsorship. As a team, getting sponsors is kind of up to you too. It's different than when I went to NASCAR, and like you said, it's more corporate involved. And World of Outlaws sprint cars has gotten way more corporate. You go to a race now, there's hospitality suites. None of that existed when I was racing with the World of Outlaws. But my first big sponsor was my university. I went to school at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, and I was getting my engineering degree. And one of my professors actually approached me and said, have you ever talked to the school about sponsoring you? Because, you're in a male dominated school. Why, I think it's a great fit. So I actually had the dean of admissions. I put this giant proposal together. I was a sophomore in college and thought I had written probably 100 proposals and never heard from anyone, but I was putting this together. I went to meet with her and she said, okay, well, how much do you need for next year? And I actually was like, I kind of got stunned because I could tell she was kind of serious. So I threw out a number. And by the time I walked back to my sorority house, because yes, I was in a sorority, so there was an email that the school would sponsor me. And they actually went on to sponsor me for about 3 years and they helped me pay for travel so I could finish getting my degree, which was obviously really important. My mom never really understood this because she was like, wait a second, I'm paying tuition and your race, they're paying you to race. Like, this doesn't make sense. But I feel like it's a much more individualized experience when you're a short track racer to get your sponsors or the team or it's people you know. It's not like you said, the major corporations.
I think from a super modified standpoint, like I said, it's a very niche market. Like Erin had mentioned, it's in upstate New York. So I'm a Pennsylvania girl. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me to ask businesses down in Pennsylvania to advertise on my race car in New York. So that was definitely an added challenge for me. I honestly have thought that like securing sponsorship dollars is probably the hardest part of racing and has been the biggest, I don't want to say headache, but you have to put a lot of time and effort into it. And if you don't, you're not going to get the results. And I had a friend actually tell me in the last year, I was like, man, I just feel terrible walking up to people and asking them for money. And he said, if you don't ask, you won't know. And when I put that in the back of my mind, and every time I met somebody new, every time I went to a new business, whether it was in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, wherever it was, she's like, hey, I run a super modified. This is what I do. This is when I do it. Here's my packet. And I actually ended up getting more sponsorship over the last 2 years that I ran than I did ever before. So if there's any advice I can give, just ask, because you never know.
What you're saying resonates with the previous panel we had. The ladies from Trans Am said something very similar in the sense that you won't know unless you ask. You have to ask. You just got to kind of get over that anxiety that it causes to ask people to help you out. But one of the things that's really never been explained, and maybe one of you guys can shed some light for all of us that are fans of racing, there's the challenge of getting the sponsorship. But what are the commitments like? What's the return on the investment for the business? What do you have to do to fulfill that sponsorship?
Just from racing standpoint in New York, I got off really, really easy. People were just like, look, this is your passion. You love it. You do well at it. It's really cool on Friday night or Saturday night. If I can look at Flow and I can see my name on the side of the car in victory lane, I'll take it. I didn't really have to do any kind of bring the car here, show it here. I did do a couple speaking engagements. But other than that, I've gotten off pretty easy. So my sponsors have been very fortunate to have the people that have supported me and not asked for much in return. And I know that that's not very common.
So Taylor, you had the law firm you were working for on the side of your car. How did that deal work out?
When I started working there, I wasn't racing at all. And then in the midst of my tenure there, I started racing, got the racing bug again, completely obsessed. And, you know, my law firm is pretty well known in the state of Michigan, being a personal injury firm. And so I had figured our consumer, I feel like in motorsports, is very similar to their clientele base. I just thought for me, it was an easy sell. You know, I worked there, raced in Michigan a little bit, and they had seen the whole Netflix Drive to Survive. And so then they were trying to get into racing a little bit. So I literally just asked. And, you know, it's kind of like what Alison said, if you don't ask, you'll never know the answer. And so then it snowballed from there. And then we did a commercial or shot a couple commercials. And then that's really kind of what got me back into the thick of things. And then I got connected with other sponsors. And now I have Mobile One and Bradford Allen. And, you know, it just kind of grew from there. Yeah, definitely been very fortunate. But it's one thing to get the sponsor and then another thing to keep them.
So Erin, to you on that one, because as you moved up, did it get harder and harder to fulfill the commitments? And what were the commitments like?
Certainly did. When my school sponsored me, there was like really no commitments. It was, I think we brought the car to campus one time. They didn't really have any expectations of activation or what their return was going to be. And it was actually really nice. When I first signed to race in NASCAR, I remember Ray Evernham, who I was driving for at the time and is now my husband, telling me that he's like, this next year is going to be the hardest year of your career. And I was like, I ran 102 races with the World of Outlaws. Like, nothing's going to be harder. That's like living in truck and trailer, nasty hotels, truck stops. I thought, what's harder than that? He was right, because suddenly all these sponsor commitments come. And it's kind of hard when you're racing a sprint car, you're going from one track to another. All your focus is on your car. You've got a small team. It's where are we racing next? What track are we running? suddenly it was like, okay, well, now you have to fly here because you have an appearance here. And at the racetrack, the morning of the race, you need to go to this suite, you need to go to this suite. And it's a wonderful opportunity, don't get me wrong, but it was a stark change from what I was used to. I almost don't feel like, looking back, I did a great job of managing that, because I was so used to not having to worry about anything but my car and what was going on the track, that suddenly now I had to worry about public speaking. I had to worry about media relations. They were sending to me to media training. Betty Crocker and General Mills Cheerios sponsored me, and I spent weeks in Minneapolis doing media training, and it was wonderful. It was a great experience, but it was just very different. It was, you go from focusing completely on a race car to now you're a business person and you're promoting yourself and you're also representing these huge brands. It was hard. I am by nature shy. Growing up, I've kind of outgrown that as I've gotten older, but it was hard for me. Like, some of that public speaking was, in a way, you look back and think, I wish I managed that better and I didn't let it be a distraction. But you're trying to be good at everything, right? You want the sponsor to love you. You want to be the best in the race car. And it's kind of hard. My brain is like very all or nothing. So like, I like to just be all in on the car and the fun stuff. But suddenly I had to focus on stuff that wasn't really fun for me.
That sounds very tiring.
It was tiring, but I'm so thankful. Like, I cannot look back at that and think nothing but appreciation for the opportunities I had. But it was different. Ray was right. It was a bigger step than I realized. I thought, sure, I ran with these tough guys and lived in a truck and trailer. I've got this. And then I was like, oh, all right. And you have to be on all the time. Like, you have to be, when you go to all these events and then suddenly you're going to these charity events, you just have to be on. And for someone who can be a total introvert, it's a lot.
It's almost like you're becoming one of the commodities.
Yeah.
You thought, I'm delivering wins. The wins are what you want, right? But they're like, no, we want you as well. We want this whole package.
We want all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would find that very overwhelming. And you were how old when this was happening?
23, 24.
I was an idiot when I was 24. I don't even understand how I could have.
Well, obviously I didn't do it too well because I'm not racing anymore, but no, it was honestly wonderful opportunities. I'll never forget that when Ray said to me, it's gonna be the hardest year of your career. And I thought, all right, I've raced against the roughest and toughest sprint car drivers. And then I realized what he meant. There's a lot of commitments and they pull you in different directions.
Some of y'all are involved in WMNA, and I've actually met you at WMNA events, Women in Motorsport North America, either through organizations like that or through a relationship with somebody amazing like Lynn St. James. What kind of role does that play in helping prepare drivers and other women in the sport for their futures?
I've known Lynn since I was about 12 or 13 years old, so 15, 16 years now. Her program that she had, her Women in the Winter Circle Academy, was super impactful on me, with the way you'd spend the weekend in Phoenix and, you kind of go through physical training, mental training, your nutrition. And then there was also an on-track segment, and teaching those instrumental like characteristics and the certain mentality that you had to have at such a young age really gave me a really great foundation as I evolved and matured over time. And so hope the same for what they're doing with WMNA. And I think they're trying to institute some of those kind of clinics or workshops or whatnot. But then also just by having such a large networking event once a year, that's how I really learned to talk to people. I mean, I am innately a shy person. And I actually think this is the first time I met Erin, that she was having a big event down in Daytona, maybe in like 2009. Lynn basically just threw me in a room and was like, go talk to all these executives. And I think I was 13 years old. That's when I learned icebreakers and, how to really talk to people. And so you don't learn unless you try and do it. You learn by doing. And so I feel like WMNA is trying to kind of reciprocate some of those things that Lynn started so long ago.
And there are a lot of sponsors in that room. I've been at those conferences. There are a lot of sponsors milling about there.
Yeah, I love what they're doing. I actually went to Lynn's Women in the Winter Circle driver development program like 26 years ago. I was one of her first classes, and Lynn took me under her wing and brought me to the Indy 500. And, she kind of did the same thing to me. We were on pit road, and I think it was Chip Ganassi, and she was like, you need to go introduce yourself. And I was like, horrified. I knew exactly who he was. I was 18 or 19 years old. She's like, no, you need to. And when Lynn tells you to do something, you better do it. Like, oh, I went over there and I introduced myself. But I think what they're doing now is wonderful. It's the next level of it. They're getting corporate sponsorship. I was involved in the beginning of it. I stay in touch with Lynn and Cindy both. And I think it's great. I love the networking. I love the opportunity it's providing. I love the mentorship it can provide for younger kids coming up and just the example. Like they can see whether it's an engineer or it's marketing or it's broadcasting, whatever, they can see another woman doing those things day to day.
I'm not in any of these programs out here in the East Coast, so it would have been a really good thing maybe to have that growing up. Being the only woman in the series that I've run, that would have been a really nice touch to have those mentors and to have that relationship with people that have been there and have done that. That's really great that they're doing something like that now and they offer that to drivers working their way through the ranks.
I see some questions from the people.
Yeah.
I want to know what the people are saying.
Well, we do have a question from the audience and actually dovetails right into the next question we sort of had in mind. Margie Smith Haas writes, what types of things have you ladies done to encourage other young women to get into auto racing? Any particular stories you'd like to share? And I'll add to that any advice you'd like to give young ladies who dream of getting behind the wheel and maybe are hesitant to enter racing.
I've tried to stay involved with Lynn's program, even though I'm not directly in motorsports day to day right now in my life. I have a daughter who obviously grew up with a mother and father who are complete racers, and she likes different horsepower. She rides horses. So she's got me a little distracted from the racing world, but I still stay involved. I've always tell Lynn and Cindy if there's any opportunity, whether it's a panel to speak on or an event, I'm happy to do it. I've gone back numerous times to quarter midget track that I grew up in and spoke at their banquet. I've helped. Even Kaylee Bryson, a mutual friend, had asked if I would help. Like anytime someone gives me the opportunity or says that someone is looking for some help, I don't know how much help I can be. I offer whatever I can because I would love to see more women doing more in the sport, winning more races, breaking more records.
Yeah, I definitely always make it a priority at the racetrack specifically. The girls come to the front of the line first. And if there's a line of people and dads and their daughters, I'm definitely pulling them out of the crowd and saying, you want to get in the car, you want to sit in it. It might be a little sweaty, but get in there, see what it feels like. I actually had a fan at the time. She raced the quarter midgets at a local racetrack. Her name is also Alison. She ended up painting her race car to match my race car, and her dad did this big reveal at the last race of the year and presented her with her quarter midget, which matched mine, which was super, super cool. The only thing that I have incoming is 4-year-old niece, and we're really hoping that she's going to get into quarter midgets. And, my brother and I are going to get to do our childhood all over again and get the family back into quarter midget racing and go travel the United States and do it like we did it when we were kids.
I mentioned earlier how impactful Lynn's Women in the Winter Circle Academy was for me at such a young age. And, I feel like throughout my time in motorsports too, I've collected all this knowledge that I would like to pass on. And, I'd kind of come in touch with like a handful of younger girls up and coming through the ranks and late models or sprint cars. And I kind of started to mentor them in my free time and would kind of compile what I took away from Lynn's programs and put them in presentations. And, we'd meet once a month for an hour or things of that nature. And then I also recently started a nonprofit called the Safety Bank, which we aim to provide adequate safety equipment to racers in need. So not just specific to girls, we're open to both males and females, but a lot of our applicant base has been females. And my whole intention of this was to target the youth because I recognized when I was younger and up and coming, especially being a female, how much your body changes. And so, every year having to get new safety equipment and things of that nature. And so the donations that we get and how we're just trying to recycle and repurpose safety gear, if that can alleviate the families a little bit to keep everybody racing. I think that's had just a little bit of the impact of what we've been doing so far with that. But yeah, just always try to be active off the track and just encourage others because I think motorsports is such a great industry and community to be in.
A lot of other disciplines are maybe more complex. Teams are huge. It's not a family. It's a big business. They kind of operate like the military. Everybody knows their swim lane, and you got the tire guy and the gal that does the data, and everybody's got their job, right? But in your guys' world, I'm sure you have turned plenty of wrenches yourselves because if there's not a person to do it, somebody's got to roll up their sleeves and get it done. But that doesn't disqualify the importance of what you said earlier, Erin, which is you come to the table with an engineering degree, and there's a lot more young women in STEM programs that are funneling into motorsports programs. So I wanted to touch on that for a second, maybe get your thoughts on the importance of that and how it plays into what we call the larger autosphere, right? All these different career opportunities that are part of motorsport and the automotive world as a whole.
Well, I do think in general, with the creation or not, their STEM has been around for a long time, but there's such a push for STEM now, right? To me, it's allowing or it's letting women, young girls know that it's okay to be in. When I went to my engineering school, it was a quarter women and 3/4 men. Now it's almost half and half. Granted, it's been a few years since then, but it just shows as far as engineering, never mind motorsports, but engineering has changed to not just be so male dominated. And I do think, and this is my perspective, I have no statistics to back this up, but when I go to the racetrack, a NASCAR race or an IndyCar race, I see more women engineers, more women on crews than I've ever seen. I almost, in a way, feel like there's a bigger change there than there is in the driver's seat.
I don't see a whole lot of women in my side of racing. I don't have an engineering degree. I come from communications world, social media side of things, TV and radio production. So yeah, I think I'd have to agree with Erin. When you turn on the TV now and you look at these teams, NASCAR teams, IndyCar teams, you definitely see a lot more women outside of the seat, which is amazing.
I think you can visibly see more, although it is ironic. And it's great for the push, though, because I think it's trying to obviously attract females maybe outside of motorsports that weren't aware that this was even an opportunity for them before and trying to retain them in that way. I think it's interesting that when I was actually graduating from college, one of my best friend's moms had an engineering degree. And when we were watching all the engineering degree recipients walk across the stage, she had made the comment like, wow, that's so interesting. It's about the same amount of girls that are graduating with engineering degrees now as it was when she got her degree 30, 40 plus years before. But I think it's great, though, that what NASCAR or IndyCar or, higher caliber, higher forms of racing is doing to try to retain those females because the ratio is so minimal.
Looking ahead, I'm curious about what's next in your portfolio for the next year or the next 3 to 5 year plan, whichever seems more clear at this time.
I have not been racing. I've been off for 1 year, and it's about that time of the year where we try and figure out what we're doing. I've been very fortunate to have the teammate and the team that I've been able to race with in Oswego, and they have decided to step back from super modified racing. So they've downsized the team, which I can't blame them. It's a lot of running around and everybody wants to, enjoy their lives outside of racing. They've been doing it for a long time. I'm not going to say that I'm done. I'm going to say that I'm taking a break. And if there's an opportunity that presents itself, at the track with another team or another type of racing, I'm always open for it.
I have lots going on right now, not only on the track, but off the track. And so this year I do have sponsor obligations. So I'm probably going to race a little bit, not as much as I have been the past couple of years, but I'm going to be studying for the bar here soon. I've been working closely with this attorney that I hope to work for once I pass the bar. He works in motorsports, so I plan to stay in racing. And I'm almost at the crossroads in this transition phase where I feel like my impact off the track is almost as great as it is on the track. And so I'm always going to race. I love sprint car racing. So if I think, maybe I'll go run this Saturday at Winchester or something, probably go and do that. But yeah, I'm just kind of doing a little bit of everything right now.
Well, I think I've kind of hung up the helmet. I never say for good. So there's an occasion that Ray and I will go to a track day at VIR or go play around with some cars. My goal at this point is to stay involved in sprint car racing. I still do my podcast weekly and be an ambassador for the sport, but for women in racing, and offer that help to Lynn and Cindy. We've got some things we are planning in the fall here in Charlotte. And I'm still involved with the Charlotte Motor Speedway. My husband and I do a lot of the concours. We're going to be in Amelia in a few weeks. I've been doing a lot of judging at concours. We were just at the Motor Car Cavalcade in Miami, and that's been a really neat experience for me to take some of that knowledge I have about cars and sports, but just be in a different whole segment of motorsports and cars. So certainly we'll be involved in the sport. We are always tuned into some sort of race in this house, whether it's NASCAR or IndyCar or Dirt Vision, watching the World of Outlaws. I was still heavily involved, but unfortunately, I think my sprint car driving days have come and gone.
Well, with that, ladies, we've reached the part of the episode where we like to invite you to share any shout outs, promotions, thank yous, or anything else you'd like to share that we haven't covered thus far.
Yeah, I don't have anybody specific shout outs. Like I said, not racing at the time, but everybody that's supported me up to this point, my family, my husband, my sponsors. It's been fun.
Honestly, thank you guys for having us on. I want to thank Lynn and Cindy and people like Janet Guthrie, who I've had the chance to meet, who blazed the trail for us years ago. And to all the fans and the people that have supported me. Sometimes we focus on the challenges that we face as women in racing, but I also had a ton of wonderful supporters, whether that be car owners, fans, sponsors. I'm always grateful for the career that I've had in the industry.
Thanks to you guys. Great to have this panel, and learn from Erin and Alison and all our different journeys and how they overlap in a lot of ways. And, I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for my family, first of all, my sponsors, supporters, and, we'll see what the future holds.
And with that, I will pass the mic to our title sponsor, the International Motor Racing Research Center, for some closing thoughts.
Ladies, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to spend some time doing this. We really appreciate it. On behalf of the International Motor Racing Research Center, also our friends at the Society of Automotive Historians, we're really happy to sponsor this series in terms of celebrating Women's History Month. Alison, we miss you at Oswego. I hope something comes about and we see you back on track there again. Good luck to Erin and Taylor, and thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
And on behalf of everyone here and those listening at home, thank you, ladies, for sharing your story with us.
A huge thank you to our amazing panel of drivers for sharing their stories, passions, and insights into the world of short track racing. It's clear that the future of this sport is faster and fiercer than ever, thanks to women like these drivers who continue to push the limits and inspire the next generation. As we celebrate International Women's Month, let's keep supporting and amplifying their voices in motorsports. Not just today, but every day. It's through sponsorships, it's through mentorship, and sometimes it's just showing up at the track and being present with the next generation. We can all play a part in driving change.
We hope you enjoyed this presentation and look forward to more center conversations throughout the season. Be sure to follow, subscribe, and stay with us for more incredible discussions from the world of motorsport. So until next time, keep the wheels turning and the throttle wide open.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Thanks, Kit.
Women in Motorsports North America is a not-for-profit organization that began in 2022. Known as WMNA, it is a community that focuses on advancing, connecting, and enabling with its many partners, including industry executives, drivers, team members, OEM sponsors, racetracks, and more. WMNA welcomes all who share their passion for motorsports. The Women in Drive Summit continues its mission to bring together motorsports professionals. This unique event offers new pathways for individuals to explore career opportunities, discuss current industry challenges, and provides mentorship and resources for future growth in the industry. If you'd like to stay informed about WMNA and the Women in Drive Summit, be sure to log on to www.womeninmotorsportsna.com or follow them on social media at Women in Motorsports NA on Instagram and Facebook.
This episode is brought to you in part by the International Motor Racing Research Center. Its charter is to collect, share, and preserve the history of motorsports, spanning continents, eras, and race series. The center's collection embodies the speed, drama, and camaraderie of amateur and professional motor racing throughout the world. The center welcomes serious researchers and casual fans alike to share stories of race drivers, race series, and race cars captured on their shelves and walls and brought to life through a regular calendar of public lectures and special events. To learn more about the center, visit www.racingarchives.org. This episode is also brought to you by the Society of Automotive Historians. They encourage research into any aspect of automotive history. The SAH actively supports the compilation and preservation of papers, organizational records, print ephemera, and images to safeguard, as well as to broaden and deepen the understanding of motorized wheeled land transportation through the modern age and into the future. For more information about the SAH, visit www.autohistory.org.
We hope you enjoyed another awesome episode of Break Fix Podcast, brought to you by Grand Touring Motorsports. If you'd like to be a guest on the show or get involved, be sure to follow us on all social media platforms at Grand Touring Motorsports. And if you'd like to learn more about the content of this episode, be sure to check out the follow-on article at gtmotorsports.org. We remain a commercial-free and no annual fees organization through our sponsors, but also through the generous support of our fans, families, and friends through Patreon. For as little as $2.50 a month, you can get access to more behind-the-scenes action, additional pit stop minisodes, and other VIP goodies, as well as keeping our team of creators fed on their strict diet of Fig Newtons, gummy bears, and Monster. So consider signing up for Patreon today at www.patreon.com/GT Motorsports. And remember, without you, none of this would be possible.